Good evening, I'm David Brown, and this is the Northern Sun Experience. Jordan Dalton will be here shortly to break down the end of the regular season in basketball and look ahead to the NSIC tournament. But we begin tonight with a powerhouse wrestling showdown in Sioux Falls. Heading into this past weekend, Augustana and St. Cloud State were each 7-0 in conference duels. And with the conference championship still up for grabs, it was only fitting that the Vikings and Huskies met in the final duel of the regular season at the Elman Center. Let's start at 125 pounds. Top-ranked TJ North of Augustana gets 2 points on the takedown of St. Cloud State's Tim Prescott. He would start the match out with a 5-1 decision, giving the Vikings an early 3-0 lead. Back come the Huskies at 133 pounds. Number 5 in the nation, Mike Rohn. He gets the takedown on Morgan Enkbrecht. Rohn would go on to win by decision 12-5, and St. Cloud State gets 3 points in the duel to tie things up. But the Vikings made sure the Huskies had a formidable challenge. At 141 pounds, Jeremiah Peterson grabs Josh Hoke's leg and takes him to the mat for 2 quick points. Augie gets another 3 points in the duel thanks to that decision and leads the duel 6-3. But the Huskies would rip off 4 consecutive victories after that, including number 1 Clint Poster at 157 pounds. He gets the late reversal on Sean Hadelstad to win the matchup and keep his perfect season intact. The duel would come down to the final weight class at 285 pounds, and the Huskies would leave no doubt about who was best in the nation. Austin Gorgon scores a 12-1 major decision over Augustana's Michael Lohman, the only major decision of the entire duel. And it helped St. Cloud State to a 19-12 victory, a perfect season in conference duels, and a 4th consecutive NSIC regular season championship. The NCAA Super Region 3 championships will be held this weekend in Mankato, Minnesota. When we come back, the regular season has ended and tournament time is here. We'll chat with Jordan Dalton about the start of the postseason next.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by CU Mortgage Direct LLC, Sanford Health, and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience, joined once again by former Augustana point guard Jordan Dalton. And Jordan, your alma mater had a bit of an interesting weekend, let's put it that way. Augustana extended their winning streak to 19 against Upper Iowa with a win Friday night, but then they lost that season finale at Winona State. So was that loss a bump in the road, or did the Warriors maybe show other teams a blueprint for how to beat Augustana?
I think it was, to a certain extent, a bump in the road. First of all, you got to give credit to Winona State. They played a phenomenal game. They were able to force 14 turnovers by Augie and held Augie to 44% field goal shooting. And that's just the second time in the last 10 games Augie has been held below 50% field goal shooting. So the Warriors were able to come out with a great amount of intensity and great amount of energy on the defensive end. And when you talk about a blueprint, they did win an important battle at the three-point line. All year long, we've talked about how Augie has a great advantage inside and outside. You can't really key in on Dan Jansen and Casey Schilling on the inside because they can put 5 guys out there where can knock down three-pointers. Where on Saturday night, Augie only shot 32% from three-point line, making only 7 three-pointers, while Winona State was able to capitalize and make 13 three-pointers. And so that battle on the three-point line really propelled the Warriors to victory. And if you're going to talk about any type of blueprint, that's one thing that a lot of teams can take away, from that game this weekend.
So in your mind, even though there was some good things from Winona State, probably just a bump for Augustana?
Yeah, because you don't expect the Vikings to go 32% from three-point line. We talked about it numerous times. They have 5-6 guys on their team who consistently shoot above 35-40% from the three-point line. And so for all of those guys that have an off night at the same time, it's kind of an anomaly more than anything. But at the same time, it shows you how important that three-point line is to their offense. They have to be able to make those three-point shots and field goals to expand the court to allow Schilling and Jansen to kind of go one-on-one down low.
Well, with that loss, Augustana finishes in the conference at 20-2, and they actually share the regular season title with Minnesota State Moorhead. They took care of business, winning on the road at Bemidji State and Minnesota Crookston. As I said, they got into that tie for the regular season title. So how much momentum do the Dragons have right now?
I think they have an extreme amount of momentum. They're riding a 4-game winning streak, and they've won all 4 games by more than 10 points. And so that's a team, and that's how you respond to that loss versus Augie. That's a team who they seem to be extremely, extremely comfortable on the offensive end. They've started the same 5 guys for every single game this year. And that builds a confidence level, but it also builds a level of comfortability between those 5 guys on the court at the same time. They understand one another's strengths. They understand how to play off of each other. And so they're very comfortable in their own skin, and they've accepted their own roles. You got Jordan Reaver, who's a phenomenal three-point shooter on the outside, but you also got 4 other guys out there who can get the job done, not only offensive end, but on the defensive end as well. And so when you look at Minnesota State Moorhead, they just play with so much confidence and a high level of comfort on the offensive end that it's tough to rattle them. That playing together and starting all 31 games this season has really, really led them to be playing their best basketball right now at this point of the season.
Minnesota State Moorhead wins the North Division while Augie wins the South Division. So now the playoff field is set for the conference tournament that starts on Wednesday evening. So we talked about Augustana. We talked about Minnesota State Moorhead. What's a team besides those two that's coming in with a lot of momentum?
Yeah, well, we always talk about it. Anytime you mention Minnesota State Moorhead and Augustana, I think you have to throw Minnesota State Mankato in that mix. They obviously have been the top 3 teams all year long and have basically competed or battled against one another for the top team in the conference all season long. But I would not count out Winona State. We just talked about a great game, that they've had this past weekend in beating Augie, and they've actually won 3 of the last 4. One coming this weekend against Augustana, and another one coming against Mankato
on the road.
Exactly, like I said, on the road in Mankato. And so they've shown that they can not only compete with it, but they can beat the top teams in the conference. Their thing has been consistency throughout the year. They've had such an up and down year that they haven't won those games that they're supposed to win. And so that it's a dangerous team in the fact that they can beat anyone in the conference, but at the same time, they've shown that they could also lose to anyone in the conference. But I do like them coming off that big win on Saturday, and hopefully that can build some momentum and build some confidence in them to really make a deep run in the tournament.
So Winona State, a possible sleeper on the men's side. Conversely, what team kind of limped toward the finish line of this regular season maybe needs to regain some momentum if they have any shot in this conference tournament?
Yeah, we mentioned last week that Northern State had really struggled. Now, they came off 2 wins this weekend, which was solid, but in their last 7 games, they're just 3-4. And so they really have to figure it out. I feel like they were pretty fortunate in getting that number 5 regional spot in the regional rankings. And so they're really going to have to, in my opinion, win 2 games in this conference tournament this week to really submit and solidify their spot in the regional rankings. When you look at their team, they're a very guard-oriented team. And so when you have a lot of guards and you rely heavy on your guards to score, 2 things happen. Number one, they either have to work extremely hard at getting the ball into the paint off penetration, or they got to be able to knock down jump shots. That takes a toll on you in a 40-minute game. And so I just don't think they've been able to get easy enough shots, whether it's in transition or the free throw line. And I think at the end of the game, they've just been a little tired. And so that's where you see some losing some of those close games. So I really think they need to tighten up, try to get to the free throw line a little bit more, try to get some easy buckets to relieve some of that pressure on their guards on the perimeter.
So Northern State, a team that maybe needs to regain some momentum as they head into this conference tournament. Well, get out your crystal ball. 1 week from today, Wednesday, conference tournament is over. What will be the headline on the men's side, Jordan?
I really think the headline is going to be Augustana continues a historic run and wins the NSIC tournament. I just think they have way too many offensive weapons, and they're just way too big. It's tough to compete against that size and athleticism for 40 minutes. And so, once again, I talked about the offensive weapons. They got 4 guys who can go off for 20, 25 points each and every night. And so I don't think it's going to be one of those things where all 4 of those guys have an off night at the same time once again. And so I think Augie is really just on a destiny as far as their season is going. And I think they got great leadership in Casey Schilling and Dan Jansen. If you talk to Casey Schilling, he's one of the most competitive people you'll ever meet in your life. And I really think this loss was a wake-up call for them. They understand they have greater goals once again than just simply winning the regular season title. They want to win the conference. They want to win the conference tournament, and they want to host a regional tournament. And I think they're going to be able to do that with the offensive weapons they have.
Well, we shall see what happens next week. When we come back, we'll switch to the women's side of things, where Winona State's women also upset the conference's best team.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by CU Mortgage Direct LLC, Sanford Health, and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience, once again joined by Jordan Dalton. And Jordan will switch to the women's side. Wayne State's winning streak, much like Augustana's on the men's side, came to an end in Winona State. but they rebounded to top Upper Iowa on Saturday. They claimed the overall regular season crown. Same question I asked about Augustana men for the Wayne State women. Is that loss to Winona a bump in the road or maybe a blueprint for how to beat the Wildcats?
I think it's another one of those, more of an anomaly than the norm. Winona State did a great job of holding Wayne State to below 60 points for just the third time all season long. And so Wayne State has been an offensive juggernaut this entire season. Started off a little slow, but I don't think many teams are going to be able to come up with that type of defensive effort that Winona State was able to come up with. And so when you look at the game, between Winona State and Wayne State, Wayne only scored 56 points, which we talked about, 20 points below their season average. And so when you have an offensive firepower, high-powered offense like Wayne State has, it's tough to stop them on a consistent basis. And we talked about Winona State being a completely different team at home than they are on the road. So I really think the Wildcats just ran up against a buzzsaw in Winona State that night.
Well, so you think, again, much like Augustana, is this maybe a learning lesson, a wake-up call, or because it was a 13-point game, it's not like it was close?
Yeah, I'd say it's a wake-up call more than anything, because when teams get going on long winning streaks, as both the women, Wayne State for women and Augie for men, they sometimes get comfortable and complacent. And so when you get a loss, it wakes you up. It lets you know that you're not invincible and you can lose. And you really have to go back to the basics of fundamental basketball. It sounds so simple when you talk about not turning the basketball over. Getting easy shots, understanding your strengths and weaknesses. Those are basic fundamental things that each team has to focus on every single week that you come out in order to get a win.
Well, Northern State, one of the teams that's been looking up at Wayne State most of the season, struggled a little bit struggled a little bit in the middle of the season, but they turned things around. They won both games this weekend on the road. They claimed the North Division title for the second straight year. So how crucial was it for the Wolves to have a good weekend this past weekend?
I think it was huge for their mental toughness. To lose 3 games by combined 5 points is tough on the team's psyche. And so we talked about it earlier this year. Losses like that can either splinter a team or can build a sense of cohesiveness and bring them together. And I thought this weekend was phenomenal for Northern State. They were able, counting last Saturday, they're on a 3-game winning streak. They've won all 3 games by double digits, and they've held each opponent to below 60 points. So not only are they winning games, but they're winning games in their style. And so that reinforces that belief in their system that, hey, we play hard-nosed, tough-nosed defense, slow the game down, limit the number of possessions in the game, we can still get wins. Because when you lose 3 games as they did in such close fashion, it can kind of shake your confidence. So I think this weekend was huge for them. It should build some great momentum going into the tournament.
Northern State rebounds to win the North Division title. Wayne State wins the South Division title. So the same question on the men's side, now on the women's side, besides those 2 top teams, who's heading into the conference tournament with some momentum right now?
Minnesota State Mankato is tough. They can score the basketball, scoring over 74 points per game. And I would never count them out, men or women's side for that matter. They've had a great season. They actually finished with a conference record that's better than Northern's at 15-5. And so, they've won 6 out of their last 8 and scored over 70 points in 7 of those games. So once again, we talk about when you have such an offensive juggernaut, it's tough to stop all those offensive weapons consistently on the same night. And so I really think they have a shot to making some noise and competing for that conference championship.
And then conversely, what's a team that didn't really have a lot of momentum going into the end of the regular season and needs to pick things up as they head into the conference tournament?
Coach Trapp Hagen's team in University of Sioux Falls, I've given them a lot of credit this season, but they've had such an up and down season. We talk about their style of play. They play in a very up-tempo style of play, but with that up-tempo style, you have to still be disciplined in what you're doing. And so, one weekend they can win by double digits, the next weekend they can lose by double digits. It's a fast-paced style of play that they play, and it's exciting. But at the end of the game, when you need a stop, you have to be able to buckle down and show some toughness and determination, get a stop and a rebound. Same way on the offensive end. We always joke, there's a difference between an open shot and a good shot. Mm-hmm. And right now, I feel like USF gets themselves in trouble when they take that first open shot they see. You want it to be a good shot in the flow of the offense so that you get some consistency, and also you make the other team play defense. And so I really look for them, if they're going to have a great weekend or a great week, in a deep run in this tournament, they're going to have to show some discipline on the offensive end and pass up a good shot for a great shot. and really buckle down on the defensive end and get some stops.
All right, I'll ask you to play psychic again. Use your crystal ball. You said Augustana is going to win the men's tournament. What's going to be the headline on the women's side 1 week from now?
If I had to pick one, it'd be Wayne State's offense overpowers Northern State's defense. Those two teams have kind of been opposite ends of the spectrum this entire year, with Wayne State being able to put the ball in the basket and Northern having stifling defense. But I just think Wayne State has proven over and over and over again that they can get buckets. They can put points on the board, and they can buckle down and get stops when they want to. And I think Northern has just struggled so mightily on the offensive end as far as getting key buckets that I think the Wildcats will be able to prevail this weekend.
All right, so for those of you gamblers out there, just kidding, we don't condone gambling. Wayne State on the women, Augustana on the men. Jordan, thanks as always for your contributions to this show. And when we come back, it's another supersized edition of DB's Picks. The top 10 plays are next.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by CU Mortgage Direct LLC, Sanford Health, and Dakota Land Honda.
Welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. The best players and the best teams always seem to rise to the challenge when it matters the most. And with regional and conference championships on the horizon, the student athletes of the NSIC have done their part to warrant another special edition of DB's Picks. Just like last week, we'll have the top 10 plays instead of the usual top 5. At number 10, we go to Fayette, Iowa, where Ashley Rosensteele lives up to part of her last name. The freshman gets the steal after Augie gets a steal and gets the bucket inside. Check it out again. The Peacocks turn it over, but Rosensteele sticks with the play, gets it back, and gets the tough hoop down low. Upper Iowa would eventually go down to Augustana, but this heads-up play starts my countdown at number 10. For number 9, we stay in Fayette, where once again, naming is everything. Upper Iowa's Alicia Cleaver with the backdoor cut for the wide-open layup. Take another look. Cleaver sneaks behind the Augustana defense, and no one even notices. So we have Rosensteele with a steal and Cleaver with a cut, and a couple of Peacocks with some colorful plays. At number 8, we head to Duluth, where Minot State's Alex Haley stutter steps her way to a wide-open basket. Check out the great juke once again. UMD had no help-side defense, and Haley finds nothing between herself and the hoop. The sophomore had 20 points on 8 of 11 shooting, and the easiest of those 8 makes comes in at number 8. For number 7, Augustana's Dan Jansen puts Upper Iowa in the spin cycle. The junior puts the moves on the Peacocks and gets the lefty layup plus the foul. Jansen has been one of the key reasons for the Vikings' extraordinary success this season. The Vikings extended their winning streak to 19 games with a win over Upper Iowa on Friday. They're the top seed in the conference heading into the NSIC tournament, and they're leaving opponents in a daze with spins like Jansen's at number 7. And at number 6, we remain in Upper Iowa, where the speedy Peacocks get out in transition. Grant Lang with the alley-oop to Jimmy Roth just seconds after Wayne State scores on the other end. Watch it again from the start out of bounds to the finish 94 feet away. Jimmy's clearly got his special training shoes, and Jimmy's also got ups, helping Upper Iowa to a win over Wayne State and to the number 6 play of the past week. We've reached halftime of my top 10. The second half is coming up next, only on the Northern Sun Experience.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by CU Mortgage Direct LLC, Sanford Health, and Dakota Land Honda.
Welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. 5 down and 5 to go. Here's the rest of my top plays from the past week. At number 5, Southwest Minnesota State's Cole Martin makes this play seem cool. He fakes the handoff, gets both Minnesota State defenders to bite, and glides in for the one-handed flush. Taylor Schaefer does a great job of pulling the Maverick defenders away from Martin, who drives the baseline for the easy slam. SMSU lost to Minnesota State by 35, so while the Mustangs themselves weren't riding high as a team, Cole's cool moves check in as the number 5 play of the past week. For the next 2 plays, we reward the bounce pass, simple in style but dazzling in execution. Winona State's Connor Nagel hits Alexis Foley for the hoop plus the foul at number 4. Great awareness by the Warriors, especially Nagel, who threads the needle to find her teammate. Augustana would eventually win this game, but it's Winona State who won the hearts of basketball purists With a crisp pass and a smooth glide to the basket, fundamentals at their finest. At number 3, we head to Duluth, where UMD's Reese Zoel finds Brendan Pineda for the slam along the right baseline. Zoel weaves this bounce beautifully between UMary defenders, and Pineda takes full advantage with a two-handed flush. The Bulldogs top the Marauders by 3 points, thanks in part to play number 3 of my top 5. For number 2, the Huskies must be Nelly fans because they need a tip drill. St. Cloud State's Andy Foley taps the missed 3 to Jordan Poydras, who gets the tough layup falling down plus the foul. Check it out again, great awareness by Foley to recognize the Marauder defenders were crowding his side as he finds Poydras, who quite literally goes horizontal for the hoop. These Huskies were impressive, but not as impressive as the number 1 Huskies, the St. Cloud State wrestling team. The top team in the nation won its 4th consecutive conference championship with a dual win over Augustana on Friday. The Vikings and Huskies both came into the match undefeated in conference duels, but the top dog prevailed in a critical road victory. At 157 pounds, Husky wrestler Clint Poster also completed a perfect 32-0 regular season with a victory over Augustana's Sean Hattelstad. Poster's ranked number 1 in the nation in his weight class. The Huskies are ranked number 1 in the country, and their accomplishments from this past weekend count as number 1 in another supersized edition of My Top Plays. For more information on all things NSIC, you can visit northernsun.org. Once again, a thank you to all of our member schools for their contributions to this week's show. We'll be back next week from the Sanford Pentagon in Sioux Falls, recapping the NSIC tournament, all the other sports, and providing you with another Northern Sun experience.